Like, organised crime has really taken a shift upwards in Ireland in the last couple of years. Thankfully, there's been minimal tiger kidnappings and that kind of stuff. But I mean, with the amount of executives that come into Ireland from these, American multinationals, look, the risk is always there.
Welcome to the Circuit Magazine, the #1 source of information on protection matters, the industry-leading magazine for all security professionals who want to stay ahead of the game.
Post-Brexit opportunities in Ireland. No matter where you stand on the political spectrum or the debate, it is clear that opportunities are happening in Ireland, more international missions, and companies are doing business there. So today, we're very pleased to be speaking with Garry Bergin, who is the ASIS local chapter, but also a big friend of the industry. I'm here with John Moss, and I guess this is simultaneously a good news topic, but perhaps one that will stir up a lot of feeling in the community one way or the other. How can we cut through the noise? Because I think there is a good story to tell for the protector.
Yeah, of course. And first of all, it's just great to be expanding and extending our community. And, the more people you know, the more connected you are, the easier it is to operate. It's always good to build up that black book with trusted contacts. And certainly, personally, I don't know that many operators, and certainly not at the level of Garry's experience across in the Irish Republic. So it's great to meet Garry and get to know him, as we will do in this interview. But there's so many other subplots, with Ireland, and in particular post-Brexit, and the opportunities that have been created recently in Ireland, or maybe even as much as over the last decade, with lots of companies, lots of big tech companies moving there. And obviously that brings with it a lot of high net worth interests, a lot of senior management, corporate. And so that in itself will be creating opportunities. And whether you're on the Irish side or the, across in the international community, I'm sure the information that Garry is going to share with us today is going to be useful and certainly of interest to everyone.
Exactly. And you mentioned it's good to expand your network. Well, don't forget, Garry is a friend of David Rubens, Dr. David Rubens, who very kindly supports our work as well. And we recently had on our Learning and Development Forum. So it is a bit of a small world as well, but it is nice to broaden our horizons. Now, Garry in particular has an interesting history in that he is also an academic. And just like Dr. David Rubens, he's doing a doctorate in security. Although rather interestingly, and I think it will actually surprise many of our listeners, his doctorate, by and large, is on close protection and standards. And I think that is quite an interesting facet, which we can also go into, because there is an assumption. Oh, I'll do some academic study, I'll do professional study, but not so many have gone as far to do a doctorate in said subject. Do you think that's going to change, John?
Yeah, well, this is interesting. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about this. I don't know anyone else who's gone down that path, like you say. Friend of the show, Dr. David Rubens. But it will be interesting, I'm sure, for our listeners also who might be considering an academic path, that actually, you don't have to go totally off-piste, and maybe you could do something directly related to the function, your background and experience within the security industry, and particularly within close protection.
That's exactly right, isn't it? Because if it's your passion, you're going to find more to write about, more to research about, and I bet you'll get some good interviews for your Viva and stuff like that.
And not only that, but I think our industry could really benefit from this, because obviously when you start getting into academia at such a high level, it becomes, it opens up research avenues, papers, submissions to journals. And I think while the SIA licensing process was a great leap forward for the British industry, there's still a lot of assumptions that we make within the industry about the industry. So having papers written on this subject by academics could be really useful, especially academics who have a background within the industry.
Well, it will definitely elevate the cause and many topics. So I really like that. But yeah, let's meet Garry then, and let's connect with our friends in the Republic of Ireland. And I'm fascinated to find more about his doctoral research project. This is Garry Bergin for Post-Brexit Opportunities and Friendships in the Republic of Ireland.
And now, let's meet one of the contributors to the Circuit magazine.
Delighted to be joined by Garry Bergin, Commercial Manager and Consultant for Manguard Plus. How are you doing?
How you doing? Thanks for having me, fella.
It's great to have you on. And you come, of course, with lots of recommendations, and we know you from lots of other things. But today, we're delighted to sort of seek your advice on partnerships and friendships in Ireland, and with partners in Ireland. So I guess maybe our 3 quickfire questions. Let's try them, because I think it's really important to understand, what do people get wrong? What's the problem that people might face when they start to look for partners in Ireland? Okay.
Well, look, sometimes the biggest issue in Ireland is there's internal politics within different associations. You'll have some associations that, they can't see the wood for the trees or get the bigger picture on why you would collaborate. Sometimes the personal difference of one person in an association has an issue with a person in another association, and that kind of spoils it for everybody. So it kind of descends into playground antics. So that's the biggest challenge in making security partnerships in Ireland.
I see. Okay. Well, that's really key. But you seem to have pushed through, and of course, you have many great partnerships. ASIS and IFPO and many others. Where does your passion come from? And can you tell us a bit about your background?
Okay, well, look, I've 25 years experience in the commercial security sector. I started working for a sports retailer. I became a security manager there. Then I moved to head of security for a luxury retailer. I worked then as a national security manager for a garden company. And I received amazing training there. I was sent to the UK primarily for a lot of the training. I went to work for Manguard Plus for 2 years. Then I worked for another man guarding company, didn't like it, and I moved back to Manguard, where I've been for 7 years now. Academically and professionally, I came late to the party. I only did my master's in 2018. I'm a doctoral student in the in Portsmouth University at the moment, doing a DBA. But my thesis is on to develop the close protection syllabus for the Private Security Authority in Ireland, which is predated by my master's dissertation, which was a critical analysis of the SIA close protection syllabus. I've done the SIA CP course. I'm PSA licensed. I have my ASIS CPP qualification. I'm an IFPO and CPOI instructor. I've just finished the level 9 award in strategic leadership and organizational change. And then from the association point of view, I sit on the advisory board of IFPO. I was former ASIS vice chair for 2 years. I'm the current chair of the F.ISRM chapter. And last year I was admitted as a chartered security professional. And I'm a fellow of both the F.ISRM and the Security Institute. So I really believe in getting out there. Exposure is key to all of this.
Love it, yeah. That really plays to the partnerships sort of angle that we're looking for, and your shining example. And I love your academic work, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more when we come to standards and so on. But let's just take a step back. So obviously, our audience is mostly CPEP focused, some corporate security. What do you think the completely uninitiated professional should think about start doing when either going to work in Ireland or maybe looking to partner with an Irish company?
Well, I think the big thing is to understand that all security companies are not the same. Don't look at those, as you said earlier on, the glossy brochures. Do your own research and look for peer advice. Look for people who have worked for that company and what their feedback is. Did they pay on time? That kind of stuff. The other thing is look for external training initiatives with accredited courses. Don't just do the bare minimum. Like if you look at the SIA CP course, that, in my opinion, that's the bare minimum. But try and get onto other courses. And there's a lot of people they want to be the one trick pony for everybody. Like you can't be a specialist in everything. So pick one element of it and stick with it. Network as much as possible because you could be talking to your next boss. I think that's critical.
How has the threat landscape and security opportunities changed and evolved in Ireland over the last couple of years, especially following Brexit?
Well, funny, I actually wrote a paper on this for my master's, and when I researched it, the head of MI5 and the head of MI6 had completely different opinions. So, I mean, if the heads of those can't get it right, what chance do we have? And what I will say to you is, like, organised crime has really taken a shift upwards in Ireland in the last couple of years. Thankfully, there's been minimal tiger kidnappings and that kind of stuff. But I mean, with the amount of executives that come into Ireland from these, American multinationals, look, the risk is always there.
Would you say the opportunities have grown since Brexit, or? Absolutely.
In Ireland, if you look at for example, data centres in Ireland, like Ireland is the data centre hub of Europe at the moment. Like 1/3 of our national power grid is used to power data centres. And with that, you have, your eBays, your Facebook, PayPal, Amazons. I mean, they're massive, and the opportunities are massive. And like a lot of those companies have their own internal systems to manage the CP and EP requirements.
So the EP and executive security opportunities have increased also.
Yes, but in my opinion, under the radar, a lot of the large companies, they manage their own EP systems.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't want to mention anyone specifically, but they have their own close protection teams, which are normally sourced from either ex-Garda or Ranger Wing, which is the equivalent of our SAS,
mm-hmm.
of your SAS.
So what regulations and licensing arrangements should UK and international operators be aware of when they're working or operating in Ireland?
Funny enough, Sean, you don't actually need a license to be a bodyguard in Ireland, but you do need a license to stand outside a Burger King, which makes the mind boggle. But look, it is coming in. It'll be in. So close protection officers and security consultants is not a licensable activity yet under the Private Security Authority, but it is coming. Mm-hmm. So it's a bit like the UK. Like I did the UK CP course, one from a research perspective to understand what the course was about and all that kind of stuff. But it's a standard, and that's the thing. It's on a national framework, and it is a standard. Is it a very good standard? That's a matter of opinion. But it's a standard. It's a minimum requirement.
Mm-hmm. I know you've done it. Research as part of your master's degree on the UK SIA course. I believe you've done part of your degree where you questioned the students and also the instructors separately. So what were your findings with that? And I know you're working towards putting some licensing together or course together in Ireland. So tell me a bit about that as well, how the two mix, what you've learned from the UK side to help you implement something in Ireland.
Well, it was understanding the methodology, really. I mean, I found that 80% of the instructors didn't feel that the SII course was fit for purpose, and 90% of the students said the SII course was not fit for purpose. And I mean, a lot of people had issues with what I wrote in my dissertation, but I mean, from my perspective, it was brilliant because it was empirical research. It wasn't my opinion; it was the opinion of I let the research do the talking,
mm-hmm.
and that was the key part. And that was one of my big focuses, wasn't to get drawn into my own personal opinions. It was let the research speak for itself. I would have loved to see my research done with maybe 1,000 students and 50 instructors, all from different companies. the way I snowballed the instructors was I didn't actually use 3 or 4 people from the one company. I used people I'd ring you, Sean, and say, look, I'm looking for another instructor, but not from your company, from another company. And you know another instructor, pass me on his details, he did the research. And that's how I got really good feedback. And look, to be fair, there were some amazing courses out there, and some that barely ticked the box.
Mm-hmm.
There was one course I remember doing the speaking, and you did 3 days in the classroom and 12 days out in the forest playing airsoft in a country that you can't carry a firearm. It doesn't make sense, and didn't make sense.
Yeah, no, there is a vast difference between different courses, and sometimes you do get what you pay for. So you do have to research properly whoever you're going to invest in.
Yeah.
Carry out your course, because the reputation of that provider can also follow you into the industry wherever you go. So definitely carry out your own research for sure.
I know a lot of people who will take you on. If you do X course, we will take you on. If you do a Y course, we're not taking you on. I know you have the same badge at the end of it. And I think one of the key findings of the research was around the word standard, right? And as one guy, he was ex-SAS, he said to me, Gary, the difference I have with the SIA is the word standard, right? He said, if I see a guy with an SAS beret on, he's trained to a standard. I know that standard is met. Whereas if you have an SIA badge, that doesn't mean you meet the standard. If you look at the difference between a CP course in the military or the police and a CP course in the private sector, you pay for the course, and the onus is on the instructor to get you through the course, to get you to pass it. I mean, many fellas do you know who have failed an SIA CP course? And many fellas have been pulled off, the Royal Military Police CPO course. Mm-hmm. You can be flagged off that course with an RTU on your first day. And it's the same in Ireland with the Ranger Wing lads. When they do their CP course, you can be pulled off after you. If you don't meet the standard of every section, you're pulled off the course and returned to your unit. That's not the way it works in the corporate sector.
Yeah, it's very different indeed. So Gary, how can we make better partnership choices, and what opportunities do you see in the industry right now?
Partnership choices, I think it's going to come down, when the PSA in Ireland eventually decide to license the CP, I'll have a huge document that's empirical research. It's not my opinion. It's what the research has told me. I think that will be a good starting point, because I keep my own opinions to myself, other than on this call. But in my research, I let the research do the talking, and I have some amazing people to speak to. The research I will be doing will go on a couple of models. I'll have the military centric, the police centric, and then the corporate centric. So I'll be interviewing people from each sector that haven't crossed over to see what way their mindsets are. From a partnership perspective, I think there is an opportunity for a really good partner in the UK to get a lot of work in Ireland. But I mean, look, they will have to bow down to the PSA. That is the other thing, because unfortunately with Brexit, the transfer of goods and services doesn't apply to the UK.
And so, Gary, I wonder then, what's currently attractive when, let's say, someone from the UK comes over and says, "Oh, I've got X, Y, and Z." I mean, does X, Y, and Z mean anything? What's actually attractive at the moment? And conversely, what are you seeing that is attractive internationally that Ireland security professionals are sort of offering? Is there some sort of demand for Ranger unit personnel? And then conversely, what could someone do to get noticed?
I think, to be honest with you, it really is down to your exposure. Look, I've always worked off the POI model, which is performance, image, exposure. 10% is performance, 30% is your image, and 60% is exposure. And you will be look, if you're good at what you do, you will be referred. There's absolutely no doubt about it. Guys who put up on their their LinkedIn profile, I looked after the Pope and I looked after the President of America and all this kind of stuff, and you see them on Facebook with, pictures with Angelina Jolie and all that kind of stuff. You won't be taken seriously with that kind of stuff. So it's understanding your image element is critically important. Like if you can't keep quiet about doing work with Angelina Jolie, I'm not going to trust you to look after my executive that's coming into to Ireland, because you're going to be more concerned about getting a selfie with the executive than anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And if I hear one more person whose brother looks after the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, I don't know what I'll do. But it would seem that everybody is doing that, and so perhaps nobody's doing that. The grey professional, we've actually had that a number of times as a topic. We also had a fellow countryman, Terry Conlon, come on and do something about workplace violence in Ireland, and he sort of mentioned some of the regulatory requirements from retail security. And I know you mentioned that you had vast retail security experience. One thing we asked John Edery from MAST actually was, what do you think the retail security world has to teach EP? I know we've gone over this in the podcast before, but I want to ask you from your unique perspective.
Confidentiality, I think, is the big thing. That's exactly what it has. I mean, I worked for Brown Thomas for a long time as a subcontractor in. One of the big things was just keep your mouth shut. Doesn't matter who's in the store. Getting a private session, keep your mouth shut. No one is to know they're here. You know, the way Facebook is, you could have, 1,000 people outside in 5 minutes. You let them come in, do their personal shopping and leave. And it's around that confidentiality piece. I think that was key. That's one of the key things, I would say. I mean, I've seen all sorts of people in Brown Thomas.
I like that.
People spending, vast sums of money. Presidents, all sorts of stuff. But look, you do your job. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in a lift many years ago with Alexander McQueen, the famous fashion designer, and we were going up in the lift, and I said, "Gee, I really like your cufflinks," and like he took them off and gave them to me. Not the most professional thing in the world, but I wasn't doing EP at the time. I was just a security manager bringing them up to the VIP suite. Interesting times.
Nice. That's really nice, and it paints a nice picture of your principal. I know he wasn't your principal, but you're still looking after him. So, now, of course, I know that you're great friends with the F.ISRM, and you are connected to David Rubens, who very kindly supports our work. How is the F.ISRM, progressing in Ireland? What are you doing to sort of change the mindset of risk management, especially with regards to EP?
Well, it's funny. It hasn't even come out yet, but on the 3rd of June, we're going to have our first face-to-face conference in Workday. So it's going to be fully sponsored. We have 6 courses that are free. They'll be kind of raffled out or whatever way we're going to do it on the day. Conference folders. We've 6 speakers on the day. I have, funny enough, a guy from the Army Ranger, and he's going to talk about the transition from the military world into the corporate world. I have Leo Harris from Vanguard Plus. He's my COO. He's going to talk about corporate risk risk in the corporate sphere. Paul Kellett, who's the chief of the Midlands Prison, he's going to talk about risk in a high risk environment. I have Dr. David Strachan-Morris from Leicester University. He's talking on intelligence within the corporate sector. And I've 2 more. I've Finbar McCarthy, who's going to talk about procurement within the risks, within the risk industry. And then I've 1 more. I'm just waiting on it to be confirmed. But there'll be 6 speakers on the day. Very, very high level speakers. And it's all free of charge. And it will be literally the first 75 people who register for the event will be there.
Now, that sounds like an awesome initiative, and I'm sure we're cross-pollinating because we're sort of partnering with F.ISRM and everything. So I'm sure our listeners will get a whiff of that. And also, I think I know Finbar, so that's great. And it's nice to see some more academics coming in, which perhaps is a question of its own, because until I only knew of one person that did or is doing a PhD related or in connection with EP. Is it just intrinsically worth it for you? or is it worth a professional to even consider it later down the line?
I fell into CP. I did a lot of CP work, years ago, and I did the what would you call it, the runways and the bits and bobs. But I mean, to be honest, I love the whole theory around close protection, and it was something I fell into. The methodologies I understand. I like the psychology of it all. So, for example, if you're looking after a politician who has a death threat over his head, is his mental health going to be affected? Is the way he or she makes a political decision going to be affected based on the fact that he has a death threat over him? Understanding about academic theories like wicked problems. Look, EP in my perspective is a wicked problem. You can't fix it. You can only minimize the risk or reduce the risk or mitigate the risk. But it's always going to be there. You're never going to eradicate the use for a CP. So it's understanding those methodologies, and then the difference between knowledge acquisition and skill acquisition, the different models in there. Broadwell's model and Dreyfus. There's a million models out there of how skills can be adapted, and someone who can tell you, I can teach you a skill in a couple of days is sorely mistaken, because skills are developed over time. Knowledge you can pass on through classroom environment and it can be tested, but you can teach basic skills, but skills are, you give a fella, stick him on a range with a 9mm for 2 days and he doesn't pick up a gun for another 3 years. He's not competent, or she's not competent. It's only when you're doing it every day. So those skills are developed. And that's one of the big things that will come out of the research, is the difference between skill acquisition and knowledge acquisition. So it's that kind of stuff I find fascinating.
Sean, do you want to do a PhD? Is that something that's on the cards for you?
I'm busy doing an MBA at the moment, and it took over my life. So I've been so busy in my own business, I couldn't foresee myself doing a PhD at the moment anytime soon.
The advice I tell you is do it, because while you're talking about doing it and thinking about doing it, look, I'm in my 3rd year of a PhD. Mm-hmm. It's a professional doctorate I'm doing. And my professional doctorate is a DBA, so I have a doctorate in business administration. But the topic is around close protection. Like, there was no point in me doing the master's in security and risk, because I already had a master's degree in security management. So my dissertation supervisor, and he actually currently is my thesis supervisor, told me do a DBA. He said the doors, that arc is wider now with a DBA rather than with just a doctorate in security and risk. You're kind of pigeonholed into one area. So he said do the DBA. I can still do. I'm doing exactly the same thesis I was going to do, but I live with a DBA rather than a doctorate in security and risk.
Mm-hmm. No, interesting. But
his advice to me was, why would you copper fasten something that's already fastened? You only copper fasten the fact that you have a master's in it. When you actually sit down, I actually went, that's really, really good advice. Because in the corporate boardroom now, security, if you look at any of the heads of security now, they all have to have some business acumen. And into that boardroom, unless you have that acumen,
Yeah, there's a lot of people come straight from the military, don't they? And they military or the police.
Yeah.
While they've reached, fantastic heights in their respective area, in the police or the military or wherever it may be. As soon as they come across to the corporate sector, whilst they're good at, I don't know, preventing crime or whatever it is they do, once they get into that corporate environment or family office environment or whoever they're working with, it's a pretty steep learning curve. And it is going back to basics. You have to be humble and learn again.
Well, I think commercial awareness in that arena is one of the big failings. Look, unless you leave the military at the rank of a colonel or a chief inspector in the police, you have no concept of budgets or forecasting, and that. Well, it's not that you have no concept. You don't have a good level of it. Like in the corporate world, you need lads to go training. Yeah, when get the lad, the military guy is going to say, yeah, get the lads on training, get it done. You go, whoa, hang on there. Who's going to cover the guy on training while he's off training? Mm-hmm. And where's the budget coming from for the training? The guy you're putting in on to cover him from training, is he going to be paid time and a half while these other guys go? So there's that whole commercial piece is is fact. And I mean, guys not even factoring in, national insurance and, all the added ons when they're pricing for a job. It's a mad environment. But look, I had a brilliant mentor from a commercial perspective. Like the managing director the former managing director of Vanguard was, he's a commercial genius, and I actually learned so much off him. Pricing and doing tenders and all that kind of good stuff. I learned so much from him, and it was really, really beneficial to me. And that's probably why, look, I'm commercial manager for Vanguard.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is. And it's anyone who's looking to get into the industry at a senior level, you should definitely look to get that sort of training. To come in with none of that background is pretty tough, and you're going to be dealing and managing people below you who've got, you can learn from their experience and knowledge, but you're the one responsible for managing them budgets. Whatever else,
Yeah, absolutely. Throw in a bit of, SPSS or, NVivo to, get your data qualitatively or quantitatively managed. They're lost, absolutely lost. They're brilliant out in the field, but not behind the desk.
This is a good connection to our recent episode with Scott Walker in the States. It's not. I don't think it's his term, but he put forward the term veteranpreneur. What is uniquely special about someone from the forces or the services? Hey, maybe one thing is many people have a pension or a stipend, and actually, if that's true, then you have a bit of a safety net to try something new and to try and get these business skills.
Absolutely. And look, I don't know the way it works in the UK, but I mean, look, before someone leaves the military in Ireland, you get pre-discharge leave, to test and get out there and get a couple of courses under your belt. And there's all sorts of funding now for recognised courses in Ireland. Like you can do, IFPO courses, ASIS courses, F.ISRM courses, and get them under your belt. And you do get you get a bit of a bug, I find, when you do, a level 4, then you do a level 5, you do a level 6, you do a level 7, and you do kind of get that bug. I still haven't got over it, and I'm still at it.
Yeah, you're very much addicted. You've gone whole hog into the doctorate, but yeah, well, I really enjoy this, and so why don't we just reflect on perhaps advice again, considering what we've spoken about? Advice we have for people trying to do business in Ireland, trying to maybe make it. Maybe they want to move to Ireland. A lot of people got Irish passports because of whatever reason, and now they might think, do you know what? Let's make it in that setting. What can we teach them?
Well, look, understand the difference between academic qualifications and professional qualifications. I think is a big one. I mean, people always tell you stick to the academic qualifications. Your level 5, level 6. CPP is not a level 5 or a level 6. That stands on its own. But the industry demands that standard for data centers and stuff, right? I would say not all companies are the same. Do your research. Do your own peer research, Glassdoor, all that kind of stuff. Try and reach out to people on LinkedIn, grow your LinkedIn network. I think I'm on LinkedIn with about 5,000 or 6,000 people. You will, if you don't know the answer, someone in your network will. And people are genuinely out there to try and help you.
Like that. And we're hoping that now they have a friend in you, Garry. They can reach out and say hello. And unless you're too busy with your doctorate.
No, look, I do an awful lot in the industry, but look, I'm happy to help anybody who wants to reach out.
Love it. Okay, well, this has been a fantastic tour de force around Ireland, doing business in Ireland, partnerships in Ireland, and the added bonus that you are a live academic doing a doctorate, which maybe Dr. David Rubens did himself. But apart from the two of you, I don't know many people who've worked in EP doing a doctorate. So I think this is a unique opportunity to shine that light. And realism, I like the realism. What is occupational? What is academic? Look at it in realistic terms, which I think is really valuable for the community.
Absolutely, and I think the industry will dictate what qualifications are reliable and what qualifications are necessary. I think that's pretty clear. If there's a good course out there, it's been run really well. Like if you look at Amazon AWS, they've recently put on the Post CPO course as a requirement for a data center manager. So it's not on any national framework anywhere, but they have put it on their job spec. That's what we want going forward. The industry will dictate what's required. Look, the big problem I have in Ireland is I had to go to the UK to get those academic qualifications. I had to go to Portsmouth University for my master's and for my doctorate. We don't have, you can do an emergency management master's in DCU in Ireland, in Dublin City University, but other than that, there's no requirement. There is no course over here for that.
Well, maybe that will all change. Maybe the Celtic Tiger is back. I don't know if that's even a term. That seems to be a term like 10, 15 years ago. Is that even a term we should be talking about?
Celtic Tiger, I think, died a long time ago. It might be Simba Reborn, I think, is the way we call it now,
Simba Reborn. There you go. Well, we didn't expect that from talking with you today, but I really appreciate your time. From Sean and myself, we really enjoyed having you on, and as always, I believe this has been another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast. It was great to meet Garry and talk academia and opportunities in Ireland, especially post-Brexit. I think that is a winning combination. Both, it's inspiring for the operator to say, do you know what? There is a lot more you can do for research on this topic. And also, making friends in Ireland, Republic of Ireland, is a really, really key thing, especially now businesses are relocating. What did you think of today's session?
Yeah, it's great. Like I said in the intro, it's great to expand your network, to meet new people, prominent people, and just anyone really, but especially people who are, doing something either a little bit different or operating in a different field within the industry. There's so much we can learn.
And it's not as if Garry is completely unknown to our community. Of course, many people will know him, not just through his ISRM work, but also the fact that he engages quite a lot with IFSEC. And apropos IFSEC, today is also IFSEC. So if you're at IFSEC, I'm walking around. Please do reach out and see me. If you're listening in the future, obviously, then look forward to seeing you at some of the next events. And on the subject of next events, you are very welcome, of course, as BBA and NAMBA members, as guests of the 6th Annual Cyber-Physical Convergence Forum. That's the 9th of June. And if you are in London, there will be a post-event mix-up. So that's absolutely coming up. What about the magazine? What should people be thinking about?
Yeah, well, by the time people listen to this, I give everyone permission to start licking their lips. Sometime between this podcast and the next one, you will have the magazine in your hands, and a little teaser. We've got some really great features in there. Elijah, who all regular readers will know, has a regular column each issue, and he's opening up a can of worms there, and he's asking, should executive protection be exciting? And this is a really great article because I think a lot of us come into the industry and we don't have any expectations that our work should necessarily be exciting, which is in contradiction in many cases to what the general public might think, and who think it's bullets and bombs and all James Bond. And we've got tons of features. It's very diverse. We've got social media. We're talking about the fatal flaws of the modern bodyguard. We conclude our 3-part intelligence gathering series in this one, and we've also got a really great case study from a TikTok incident that went very wrong. So tons in there, lots more than that, and look forward to seeing that in the next week.
Licking your lips, indeed. Yeah, that sounds tasty, and I'm really looking forward to the concluding part of that 3-part intelligence series. And yes, I think maybe a nice shout out to everyone who is really super active in the NABA Connector app, and of course the BBA Connect app, because that is alive and well, and we really appreciate everything. I've gotten a lot of one-on-one messages lately, which is really good news. If you want to reach out, as people have done, I'm very happy to sort of be a signpost and so on. It's really great to see those apps flourishing. Right. So, Garry Bergin, thanks very much. It was a pleasure having you on. I think it wasn't since Terry Conlon that we had a perspective from the Republic of Ireland, and nobody with such a great connection to academia, especially a doctoral research project in close protection executive security. We have to keep our eye on that. We want to read it. So please do reach out to Garry. And let's, commend making friendships across the pond and across the Irish Sea. So, from John and myself, this, I can attest, has been another fantastic edition of the Circuit Magazine podcast.
You have been listening to the Circuit Magazine podcast. Be sure to subscribe and be sure to not miss an episode.